All right, so this isn't going to be a proper commentary, but I felt like I should do some sort of, I don't know, audio-visual journal exploring exactly what it was that went into the making of this video, because I actually happen to be a little bit proud of it. And not only that, but I feel like while I was editing it, the whole thing kind of came together, and I was finding myself laughing at a lot of the I don't know, kind of the magic tricks that I had to pull out of my directly out of my ass to make this thing work. Anyway, I'm recording this under the assumption that whoever's listening or watching it has already seen the video, both versions of it, the 90-second and the 120-second version of it. So let me just explain a little bit of the background behind the making of the video. My friend and I, Orion, he we follow this stuntman on YouTube that goes by the name Rustic B. I think his name is Rustic Bodomov. I guess he's a stuntman in LA, and he doesn't have too much of a web presence at the moment, but he puts out like stunt tutorials, and occasionally like does reviews for stunt work in major Hollywood films. Basically, he gives his insider's perspective and illuminates things for casual viewers. And I can't even remember how I stumbled across him. I think I was just looking up like stunt tutorials or like how to do a kip up or something on YouTube, and he popped up. And it just so happened that around the time I found him, he announced a fight competition where you make a fight sequence, a video involving a fight, and you submit it. And he and some of his fellow stuntmen, like some of his, I guess, co-workers or compatriots, or however you want to phrase that, would review the submissions on a live stream and give constructive criticism. And I thought that was a really neat idea, and I decided I wanted to get involved. So Orion and I hastily threw together a video. You can find it on our YouTube page, or I guess I'll link it. Basically, it was a very, very brief fight. It was mostly a comedic skit that involved, a few punches being thrown here and there, such as seems to be, our bread and butter when it comes to these videos we make. But it's just a skit involving what happens when you play Turtles in Time and, one of you doesn't decide to share the pizza, the healing item, one too many times. Anyway, that was our first video. We did one in the interim. It was for a Halloween fight competition. That one was one of the more intense editing sessions I think I've ever had, and the experience of filming that with Orion and my brother Matt, he ran the camera both on the Altered Beast video, which I guess I'll link also, and the video that I have pulled up here on my editor. Anyway, this was meant to be for another one of those fight competitions. Contest didn't really come together for the most part, but I had a hell of a time making this, and I'm really glad that we did it. Anyway, as you can see, I have my editor open here. I've been using HitFilm Pro for pretty much since the Halloween video, and I know Adobe Premiere would be a better tool to get oriented with industry standard editing software, but I'm not terribly familiar with it, and that $300 12-month license is a little scary for me, who only seems to make videos like once every 6 months or something. Maybe someday down the line, but for now I'm using HitFilm because it has a lot of plugins for digital effects, like the all-important blood spatter and muzzle flash effects that I always keep in the back of my mind, but never seem to work on projects that require them. We did use the blood spatter though in the Altered Beast video. Anyway, enough background detail. I guess I should get to the actual video. So as you can see, I'm at the beginning of my timeline here, and at some point in the editing process, well, actually, I should make it known right away that for the contest, Rustic actually stressed that the fight should be. I believe the stipulations in the for entry into the contest were you needed to start the fight within 10 seconds of the opening of the video. So the fighting element of it had to happen within 10 seconds of the beginning of the video. That right there made things a little tricky for me. But additionally, the theme of the video this time around was the fighting choreography needed to involve household items. And if you've seen the video, you know what sort of household items we ended up using. We're a bunch of dorks. And the other caveat was that it needed to be 60 to 90 seconds. I choreographed this skit by myself. I was basically jumping around my very small apartment by myself, standing in for both myself and Orion and trying to keep oriented. I had Orion come in the day after I wrote things down and had it worked out to actually work through it and see if any significant changes needed to be made, because I'm one person. I can only imagine so much of what my interactions with my partner are going to be like in the moment. So to actually have him in the room with me did lead to a few tweaks here and there, and it also did lead to us becoming a little bit indecisive as to how we wanted to end it. Basically, I ended up choreographing everything by myself, and we ended up shooting it and using it, using all of it, basically, with the exception of the final sequence. So basically, up until he whips me in the eyes, that was all worked out by me a few days before we actually shot things. And we did shoot in 2 sessions, once up until we got up to the bookshelf. So when we're struggling on the bookshelf right after the Bourne Ultimatum inspired moves, that was the cut point for the first day. And then we came back for just like an hour and a half to do a couple of reshoots. Actually, I didn't end up using most of the reshot material, but I just wanted to have options when I was editing. And also the all-important ending sequence, so everything that happened after he got knocked down from the bookshelf. So yeah, actually, one of the most significant changes that happened from how I envisioned things was shooting everything that we choreographed resulted in a video that was roughly 2 minutes long, and Rustic did emphasize that he wanted it cut down to 90 seconds. So I finished. You're looking at the finished timeline for the 2-minute version of the video. So I ended up having to cut 30 seconds of this very hastily. And you know what? I think it actually turned out pretty okay. I think it flows just fine. It gets a little hurried, especially the scorpion beat when he throws the cord into my stomach. I don't like the cut in the 90-second version. It's a little too fast. There's too much visual information that isn't communicated clearly. But other than that, I think, well, also we did lose a couple jokes in there, but the actual flow of the action seems okay, except for that one beat. Anyway, so for the purposes of this review, though, I'm reviewing what I guess would be the official version of the video, the one that actually coincides with how I envisioned things working out. So the first significant change that, and I'm going to stop talking about Rustic's influence and stuff. I'm just going to start talking about what was going through my mind when I was editing this. So the very first shot that we open on is of footage from X-Men vs. Street Fighter. I can't remember the name of the YouTube user that I borrowed this footage from, but I cited him at the end of the video. Thank you for that, whoever you might be. I could never, hope to do a Magneto Infinite if my life depended on it. Initially, though, this clip, this very boring clip of it's basically just an exterior establishing shot. Um, I'd used essentially the same shot before for the Turtles in Time video that I mentioned earlier for the first contest we did. And I thought it would be fun to carry on with that. However, given that I was cutting things out, I was in a very cut happy mood when I was finishing this 2-minute version because I had the 90-second thing hanging over me. I ended up cutting this out because I felt that, you know, it's a little extraneous. And I thought the idea of just throwing the viewer into things might make it more intense and might build the energy a little better. So let's start scrubbing through here. I'm sorry if the playback footage of this is loud, but I'm gonna play the video. Yep. Nice reaction shot of Orion. I really love this push-in. I think I shot that. I think my brother handed the camera to me because I have a thing with faces. Like, I really like putting the camera right up people's noses, and Orion's so very expressive that like he excels at this kind of stuff where he communicates quite a bit with just his expression. You can tell he's in agony right there. So, looking at that, my brother directed me in this scene. He said he wanted me to, like, initially I was just going to be kind of blank, but he said you should look like the other disabled kid from South Park, the one that has his head leaning back all the time, that gives the kid with the crutches. He gives him the steroids when they're doing the Special Olympics thing. He said channel him. So I just cocked my head back. It was like a combination of Vin Diesel and that special needs kid or whatever from South Park. Anyway, if you wanted to look at it, and originally when I was cutting this, I was going to do one more cut to Orion's face looking pissy, but we actually didn't really have a good shot of that. Originally, I had a shot from this angle over here where he looked at me cockeyed, and then I didn't like this angle though. I tried punching in a bit using the editing tools, and it just looked cheap because the pixelation started to enter into the picture. The resolution just wasn't there. And I think in terms of progression, going from this distressed look to just like, you son of a bitch, like, I think it works out pretty well. Here I am, and then I sped up a little bit of his arm whip when he yanks the cord out here. My brother shot this macro of the PS2 cord getting yanked out of the console. Took about 3 or 4 tries to get it right. Yanks it out. This shot I've never been really happy with. I wish we had come up with a better way to transition from him being on the ground to him standing, but we just didn't have the shots. So for editing purposes, I just had to find the best clip I had that communicated the most information. So you have him wrapping the cord, starting to get up, and then he's just up. And then he puts the cord around my neck. We have a digital punch in, so that wasn't an actual physical zoom. That was achieved through editing. Originally, I was going to struggle on the ground. My brother had an idea for a funny bit where basically I have my arms outstretched and I'm still trying to play the game while I'm being choked. Funny enough, we did that exact same beat in the Turtles in Time video, and I still like it. Basically, like, I thought it would add to the humor of having this guy who's in physical danger of being killed, still trying to win the match. It shows where his priorities lie. But for brevity, I just cut out that and just had me come straight up. And then the 90-second cut version of this does not have the joke you're about to hear.
First time playing the game, huh?
I'm not sure how many of you out there think that's funny. I thought it was pretty funny, so it ended up in there. I'm half Japanese for anyone who cares to know that. So I feel I have license to throw humor like that around all I want. Anyway, I really like Orion's reaction here, where he's like, he actually is starting to ease up. Like, he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be that upset. I should have known this would happen. And then violence ensues, and we break off from each other. I wish his reaction to getting headbutted there was a little better, but because he had the cord around my neck, Orion's always very careful about like not wanting to hurt people. I think I've accidentally struck him more times than he's done me, so I'm thankful for that. But I just wish we had a better shot, maybe a tighter shot, showing his reaction to that, because it's good, and we cut away from it pretty quick, but it just doesn't have some of the oomph that later shots have. So it's kind of an awkward beginning to what I think is actually a pretty decent fight sequence. I go down, never mind my shitty hairline, but I actually really like my face acting here. I'm one of those people who doesn't typically like seeing themselves on camera, but I make a face here. I don't know why. I just get a kick out of that, and I think we shot 2 takes of that, and of course that was the better of the 2. I make it to the door, and then we have a shitty Photoshop effect that is not quite synced up with the background here. So we have the door. In case you couldn't tell when you watched the video live, it is unlocked, and then the controller whips in, and the lock gets replaced by a very poorly photoshopped image of the same lock but closed. And yeah, that was achieved through just taking a still frame of this shot and then rotating the lock and brushing out some of the shadows, and then just trying my best to match move the photoshopped image on top of the lock. I really love the timing on when the controller comes back to Orion's hand. Actually, it's funny. The sound effect that happens when the controller hits the lock is is used like a half dozen times in this video, because I just love the violence of it. It's just this like horrific slap noise that I think I might isolate the audio of that and use it in future videos, because I just love it so much. And then he catches it, and I look back. Originally, I think there was a few more frames of me turning around there. This whole slow push into Orion's face is, I think, cut from the 90-second version. I happen to like it a lot because, again, I like putting cameras in people's faces, and I just love the body language. I like the choreography of his hand going down and the camera coming in. And yeah, there's no editing trick there. That's just good acting. Originally, there was a few more frames in here of me like looking from side to side, like maybe thinking about making a move of some sort, but I decided to just isolate the eep, the Bart Simpson eep, and yeah. We have our scorpion sequence coming up next. I get hit in the stomach, yank, and then there's what? So yank, side angle, his perspective, and then an uppercut that I wish was a little better. If you view it in slow motion, it is a total whiff, and even my reaction to it is a little out of sync. But yeah, go. 4 or 5 clips in there for just like one very simple sequence. I flopped on my back about, I think, a half dozen times. My tailbone started to hurt after a little bit, but no violent falls or anything like that. The toasty idea was mine. However, Orion was the one who suggested using a photo of his brother, Cougar, as the toasty guy. I think Orion found like probably the perfect still of Cougar to do that with, because just his expression has like just the right amount of enthusiasm. And I decided to put it in black and white because I don't think the original Mortal Kombat was grayscale, like the original Toasty guy. But for some reason, that's how I remembered it. And I just decided to go with that. Plus, it makes it more obvious that something is sliding into frame that doesn't belong there. And then that's he starts doing the shout pathetic fool. And then I absolutely love the timing on this. I think we shot like 3 or 4 different takes of the. It's actually it's Yoshi's Island. The box there is a sealed Electronics Boutique copy of not copy, but it's authentic. It's a sealed in Electronics Boutique plastic wrap Yoshi's Island box that I think I found in a Value Village dumpster years ago. That's embarrassing. But yeah, we shot like 4 or 5 different takes of my brother throwing the box at Orion's face while I held the camera, because my brother, he had like a company softball team or something, and he likes baseball, so obviously he's got throwing skills. I have terrible hand-eye coordination when it comes to throwing and catching. So yeah, my brother was the stunt hands. But I just love the timing on this, where it bops him right on top of the forehead. It goes down, and then the timing of his head tilt is exactly what I envisioned, and Orion's very good about doing that. And of course, we explode with energy immediately following that. It's a recurring gag that I don't know if it's from me or from a combination of both Orion and I, but we seem to like to do that thing where things get really, really ramped up, they pause, and then they get really, really ramped up again, like immediately. It's just a universally comedic beat that seems to work its way into a lot of things I do, and I guess I enjoy it. I don't know about other people, but it seems to work for me. So then I grab a game. I don't think it was actually Pocky and Rocky, but as you can see here, that is Pocky and Rocky. So this is the first time I've ever done 3D animation. HitFilm has that capability, and it's not something I've ever messed with before. So when we were filming, I just kind of said very casually, like, "Oh, I'm going to do this in 3D. I'm going to do CGI." And my brother and Orion both kind of like looked at me like, okay. Orion kind of has that way about him where if I say I want to try something in editing, he usually trusts me. He usually trusts that I'll figure it out, because I do seem to learn something new every time I do this. And so this was a big step for me. So I had I had no idea how I was going to do this before I did it, but I basically found a free-to-use 3D model that somebody made. Again, I cited them at the end of the video. Sorry, I can't remember your name right now. But I found a Creative Commons license 3D model of a Super Nintendo cartridge. And I downloaded it, and I don't know what software to use to manipulate 3D objects. So I did a little bit of research, and then I can't remember how I stumbled across it, but I just kind of discovered in my settings that Microsoft has a 3D model manipulation software on Windows 10, just like preloaded. So I kind of assumed it was going to be janky software, but for my purposes, I gave it a shot and figured it might be good enough to... Basically, all I really wanted to do was color this transparent 3D model object. The appropriate shade of gray that you're seeing there, which was I dropped directly from a Super Nintendo cartridge. And then I took the illustration, the label sticker from, I think it was 10 different Super Nintendo games and skinned it on top of the 3D model. And somehow, through all sorts of bullshit that I can't even remember how I did, I got it all to work. So you really can't see it, but all of the Super Nintendo cartridges that you're seeing in the video are built from the same 3D model, but all of them are appropriately skinned with the correct label. So Pocky and Rocky's the first one. And then we have an animation where Orion deflects it. I throw a second one, and it's, if you can read that, that's Blackthorn. And this one, I actually think I tilted it on purpose just to kind of try to show off that, yeah, the label is there. But I don't think there's a single shot that, or a single frame rather, that actually shows the detail of the label. So that was my bad. I wasted a lot of time putting those labels on for no reason. And this shot, all of that was cut from the 90-second version, me doing my face. Spin move because, you know, I really love the camera movement that goes with it. For timing purposes, I actually kind of like not having it, but I really like that my brother tracked my movement really well and made me look super badass. And then the big throw. So I think there are 6 carts in there, and NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition are in there. I think Final Fight's in there. But yeah, like I said, you can't really see any of them. So it's just me doing a Hadouken or a Kamehameha or however you want to phrase it. Of course, that's live action footage that doesn't have the same amount of oomph as the actual throw, but I figured I'd just leave it in there. Plus, I was kind of burnt out from animating all the previous shots, and I just wanted to move on to the more exciting parts of the video. So that was impatience on my part. I probably could have... we did actually shoot a blank plate of him reacting without having cartridges thrown against him. We laid a blanket down, and I think we threw the carts at him twice. The blanket did nothing to dull the impact of the carts falling on the ground, the hardwood floor. Thankfully, we didn't use any expensive games. Hit, pose, and then again, these are clips that were cut out of the 90-second version, my reaction, and then the zoom in on the cartridges. If you can see there, that's Weapon Lord. I put that there intentionally, thinking it would be a cute nod to the theme of the video, the household items, and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, an allusion to the fact that I basically just threw a Hadouken. Orion and I like to put Easter eggs like that in our videos. It's for fun. I don't think anyone ever notices it. Like in the Altered Beast video, we did a big long. Well, I put a lot of time into printing a bunch of fake DVD labels because the gag was that the opening shot of it is my finger running across my DVD shelf, and every movie that is in clear view is a werewolf-themed movie, and then the one that I end up yanking off the shelf happens to be Magic Mike. So the gag is just that, you know, it's a visual cue that, oh, hey, there's going to be werewolf stuff in this video. But again, I don't think anybody noticed that. Put a lot of time into cutting out all those labels and printing them, though. So, oh yeah, and slipping them into the cases. Anyway, I yank the cartridge out, and then I do my big kick that I don't think we had a single good, like, great shot of it. I did the motion right maybe twice out of 4 takes. But the problem was Orion's reaction never quite synced up. So we have this kick where I go, wah! And then I had to very quickly cut away because his head just didn't quite sync up. So we cut away to him dropping the controller. And then I come in and I do this sequence where in slow motion, these hits don't look coordinated, but at normal speed, I feel that they sell. The one part that doesn't sell are these rapid fire shots going up the side, and that's mostly my fault for not getting the timing right, but also it's a lot to react to. And I don't think we ever got a great take of that, but I left it in because I happen to like it. Plus, it transitions well into the next sequence. So I drum up his side, and then this shot is actually from the second day of filming. I don't think we got it from this angle ever before. No, we did. It was just his reaction and the timing just didn't quite work. And also it looked like I was whiffing pretty bad. So I replaced it with this, and I think it sells. It cuts a little too quick, but the idea is we're trying to keep the energy level up because this is the fight proper finally after like half the video basically. I have this fun little sequence here where it's originally there's one more punch in there that we filmed. I started with a right hand, but I figured I'd just hit him with a right hand, so it would be kind of awkward to do right. So we have block, duck, and then back hand, and then he sweeps my arm down to the side and slaps the cartridge out of my hand. It hits the wall. I left the audio in of it hitting, but a friend of mine told me that this clip was a little too quick and he didn't quite see what happened, but I think it's fine. This whole block and duck sequence, the entirety of it was shot without any cuts, probably half dozen times, and it was good every time. I just went with the best version of it. And then the shoulder charge, I wanted Orion to really clobber me, but again, he's very, I don't know, he never wants to go 100%. So I was urging him to just plow into me. I'll sell it. Don't worry about it. Like you haven't hurt me once this whole time, so don't worry about it. You get one at least. But I think it works. I drop down to one knee after he hits me. And then we have what we've been calling the Bourne sequence, the Bourne book. So Bourne Ultimatum has a famous fight sequence between what's his face, Matt Damon and Joey Ansah, who's a British martial arts choreographer and also like a film director. I think he made the Street Fighter Assassin's Fist web series. He's pretty talented. I like his style, and he has a very unique look that makes him very versatile. I can't confirm, but I think last time I saw him, he may have been in Mission Impossible Fallout as just some guy that gets shot. But always welcome whenever I see him. Anyway, the Bourne book refers to a beat in the Bourne Ultimatum where Matt Damon and Joey Ansah are fighting. It's this big, brutal fight that unfortunately has some really shitty sound effects. I'm not sure if any of you have paid attention to that, but the sound effects used in that sequence do not live up to the standard set by the actual choreography and editing of the sequence, because it's gorgeous and it's very brutal, but the sound effect, they have like the most stock whoosh, 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 like you know, Western bar brawl punch sound effect, like practically Indiana Jones punch sound effects and stuff. And I think there's like a grunt or two from like GoldenEye, like the Nintendo 64 GoldenEye in there. It's really kind of a shame. I'm guessing they ran out of time or something. But the Bourne book refers to a specific sequence, like specific beat within that sequence, wherein Matt Damon clobbers Joey Ansah with this book. And it begins with slamming the book on his foot, whapping him across the face. I decided to add that kind of straight shot on the nose. I love the impact of that. Bah! That wasn't in the Bourne Ultimatum, but I thought it looked cool, so I added it. And then Matt Damon followed that up by pressing the book into Joey Ansah's like collarbone or throat, and they struggle for a bit. Like a piece of furniture. There was some sort of cabinet or shelving, and then in the Bourne Ultimatum, he presses the book up against his face and like punches and elbow smashes him against it, and then whaps him with a right cross that moves the action away from the shelf. Basically borrowed this entire sequence from there. Except I had an idea for a shot that we did shoot, but it just doesn't look right. And look at that whiff. Look at how far I am from his face. Like, it sells on film, but when you slow it down, it looks like garbage. I'm apparently turning into Agent Smith or something over here. So I had this idea for a shot that we did shoot, and maybe I can actually find this clip. We did shoot it. I wanted to do it all in one take, but just logistically it wasn't happening. So that's just on the bookshelf, but the idea was I wanted to punch him across the face, and then he falls to the ground, and I wanted my brother to follow the camera all the way to the ground, like all the way to the ground basically, so you see him flop on the ground all in one take. Ultimately, we never really got a shot that was coordinated enough to actually pull it off, so I just abandoned the idea and edited things. More importantly, though, speaking of whiff, so this is me being wary of hurting him. Speaking of the whiff, if you pay attention, and I'm sure some of you have, this shot, this reaction, is entirely fabricated. So you have me throwing the punch, and then this shot here, which also Easter egg, if in case you didn't notice, when we're on the shelf, Ric Flair and I think that's Barry Windham actually fell off the shelf, and I left the audio in there because I liked it. Magically, they're back. Continuity issues. So this shot was actually Orion reacting to getting kicked, that spin kick I did. So what I did was, when we were filming this from this angle, I don't think we ever got a proper close-up from over the shoulder or in his face of him getting punched. So I just didn't have that footage. So I took this reaction of him reacting to the kick, I pushed in, tightened up the framing basically, and then I took a photo of my own arm in front of one of my white walls, photoshopped out the background detail, and then added motion blur and animated in my arm. And you can see my farmer's tan down there. So this shot never happened as it is shown on film. I never swung my arm in front of his face in that fashion, and his head whip was imagining a kick instead of a punch. I always thought that was cute. We have this great shot where I love the timing on the edit when he's falling, and then we show the tighter version on the ground, and continuity. You can see that the cartridges are still on the floor from when I hit him in the chest with all of them, and you can see the controller cord already on display here. Orion did a great job flopping on his face there. He said his knees and his elbows were pretty sore the next day because when we were having him do this fall, there was a blanket and a yoga mat down on the ground for him to fall on. But for this shot, obviously we couldn't do that. We did it, I think, 4 times. So he was a good sport about that. Thanks, bud. And then I think I ended up using a separate clip for him actually looking at the controller, so hence the need for me to cut to myself looking mean up here because I needed something to cut away to. Then I added a whip noise when he sees the controller. Again, there's that familiar ramping down and ramping up of the action. That's just something I like to do, I guess. So things ramp up immediately when his hand hits the controller. And then this shot is I took, again, Photoshop to the rescue. I dangled one of my own PS2 cords in front of my white wall again, and did the exact same thing I did with my arm. I photoshopped out all the background detail, isolated the cord, and just motion blurred and animated it across my face. So he never actually, well, he did actually whip the controller kind of at me, but I don't think I was actually standing anywhere near it. But when he did that roll move, we did have him, you can see there's some slack, but not too much, because I didn't want him to hit my brother or the camera. Then I couldn't find a way to get the visual language down, I guess, of him spinning the controller and coming up. We had several other angles of that, and somehow I can't exactly explain why, but I couldn't use those angles because it messed with the geography of the scene, and the timing was just off. So I wish we had a more visual angle than this to show him like spinning the controller in his hand and looking cocky. Speaking of which, all of this was cut out of the 90-second version as well. Looking self-satisfied, like, yeah, I'm gonna beat his ass. Then there's a awkwardly motion blurred scene of me rubbing my eyes. I put it in there to make it look more disorienting, I guess. It's not necessary, actually, but I figured I tracked his shot, I may as well track mine as well. Still not sure how I feel about that, but it's in there. Oh well. Then originally, there's an Easter egg that I'll skip ahead to. Here we go. So originally, the draft version that I made of this video included a slightly different climax that I went to the trouble to put together and send to my brother and Orion to ask their feelings on. So here's that.
No escape! 1, 2, 3! I got big!
So you'll notice the stars weren't animated in yet, because I hadn't gotten to that point yet in the editing process. I hadn't decided I was going to do that yet. But all that audio you heard and the super combo effect, I did this because I was having trouble figuring out what to do. So I got a little desperate and went back to the well, I guess, one more time. In a Final Fight skit video that we made, Orion and I used the same Street Fighter 4 background animation for me doing a super combo, a spinning lariat, as opposed to whatever punch combo this is. But all the audio is taken from Capcom vs. SNK 2. It's Balrog, or Mike Bison, whatever you want to call him. Him and Geese Howard's audio in that game is absolutely fantastic. I used Balrog's audio in a Manny Pacquiao video I put together a long time ago. But anyway, it got vetoed by both my brother and Orion, so I decided, okay, we should do this a different way. Instead, it's just 3 punches, and then to give it some more visual flair, I decided to animate these stars over my head. So that's from a sprite sheet that I can't even remember where I had to animate each and every one of those stars by hand, basically, because I'm moving constantly in the shot and I don't quite know my way around tracking in hit film yet. Yeah, that took a lot of time. And then that knockout sequence, I wish I had whipped my head a bit more violently, but we had done quite a bit up till then, and I think that was actually the best I had left in me up to that point. What? A couple times. So these are more clips that are missing from the 90-second version. The pause screen that I manufactured. Funny enough, this frame, this exact frame of animation is what we had up on the TV the entire time we were filming. for continuity purposes, I thought it would be nice to have it just be the same frame constantly, just in case anyone gave a shit. I don't think anyone does, but I went to the trouble of using the very janky PlayStation 3 YouTube player to isolate this frame. Trust me when I say the playback and pause function on the PS3 YouTube player is not very accurate. It takes quite a while to get exactly the right frame. Anyway, I just photoshopped. This is actually Street Fighter 4 font. The pause there. So yeah, this is missing nice. And my hand coming down on the pause button, which I happen to like having in there. And looking up to find. And I didn't ramp up the speed on too many movements in this video, surprisingly enough. But this is one that to speed up to get the intended effect of him kicking me on the looks like the chin or the nose. Back. I don't know why, but I picked out this piece of music from a stock library that again I cited at the end of the video. I picked it up very early and I saved it to my hard drive, and I was like, I'm going to use that for something. I'm not sure what, but when it came time to film this part of the video, I just kind of knew that that's what I wanted to use. I'm not sure if it's a perfect fit, but it's what I had in my head when I was editing it, so it's what I went with. Fun little note, I actually had to punch in a bit on this clip in particular. I had to adjust the framing because, as Orion pointed out to me, my computer monitor on my desk that I'm using right now, it was visible up here, and I forget what we were doing exactly, but we were watching one of the clips from the footage we had shot like earlier that day, or like the last session that we filmed on. We were watching it for like continuity purposes or something, and it was still up on the monitor. So originally I was planning on doing like a match move thing or something and like put a blank desktop screen on top of my monitor, but that proved way too time consuming. I'm confident I could have done it if I really committed to it, but when I really thought about it, I was like, it's not worth it. I'll just adjust the framing and cut it out. You can see it all, and it looks fine. Although, if you if I adjusted things just a little bit, this white frame here is, I think, the bottom of a VLC player. Down, I love his little when he sits down. And then that pause sound effect that you'll hear is actually from Street Fighter Alpha 3. Last time I played the console version of X-Men vs. Street Fighter was when I was in like middle school. So I don't actually remember what that sounds like, and nor was I able to find like a YouTube video that had it. So I just went with a sound effect that I know to be very iconic because I played a lot of Street Fighter Alpha 3 back in the day. So that's the sound effect I went with for when he hits the pause button. In retrospect, probably should have done the crossover hyper combo or super combo or mega hyper combo, wherein Ryu jumps onto the screen and also does the Shinku Hadoken, but I went with the finish. Orion's ecstatic. I told him just look like the biggest douchebag you can, like appeal to a crowd that isn't there, but you're like just like, yep, I'm super happy with what I did.
Hey.
And then he very quickly makes his exit. I love every line he has here.
Hey. Good game, Trev. Oh, no.
That beat. This was improvised. It worked out beautifully, and funny enough, we had him exit the room probably 4 times, and all of this entire progression is taken, like little bits of it are taken from each clip, but this one came from, I think, the first time we filmed it, and he actually pulled on the knob and he actually legitimately forgot that the door was locked. And his just like nonchalant manner in which he like notes that the door's locked because he locked it, it just tickles me in exactly the right way. And unfortunately, I think Orion's the kind of guy that when he's in on the joke, he's not the kind of person, I think, that if you tell him to like act a very specific way, he'll make it funny. He just has to make it funny his own way, and he managed to do that. And this line just, it makes me laugh. I don't even know if people get it, like if they even notice that it's funny that he's trying to open a door that's locked. But I like it. I'm glad we had it. Every other take we had of it was kind of shitty, but the first time he did it offhand and unknowingly, it was great.
Good game, Trev. Oh, no, I locked it.
And then originally I was going to be cutting back to the windscreen footage from X-Men vs. Street Fighter. But then the visual language of it was too muddled and didn't make sense. So this was actually an insert. I actually had to set up my camera on my tripod and like slide my legs underneath the legs of the tripod to get this angle. And I just recorded a few, like 30 seconds of me making goofy faces and just tried to find the goofiest one I could. And I think I used a still frame because I wanted to make sure that my face was frozen, and just edited like some digital judder on top of it, like a shaky cam effect, to give the effect that, yeah, you can see it, very subtle, just to give the effect that it's not a still frame.
No, I locked it. I got it. See you next week.
Orion wins.
And we end with the title of the video, Friendship. I actually asked Orion if titling the video that would be giving away too much, but he thought it would be just obscure enough. My worry was that we do the Scorpion beat and the Shao Kahn stuff, and people would piece it together too quickly. But I don't know. I like to have the goofy punchline at the end. It seems to be another thing that we do in a lot of our videos. This font is from Mortal Kombat 3. And this friendship was actually taken from a GIF, again from Mortal Kombat 3. I isolated all the frames of it and animated it myself. I isolated the frames of the GIF and just put them in sequence, and then made a video clip out of it. And then
Friendship.
Dream, don't die.
A quote from Cyclops from X-Men vs. Street Fighter. Actually, I think that clip might be from Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, but I don't know why. I've just always thought that quote was really terrible, just really, really stupid. So I decided to throw it in there. When I was trying to cut things down to a minute 30, actually, this ending card here with the dreams don't die was something that I was very resistant to cutting out until eventually I caved. But for some reason, I was very adamant about leaving that in there. And we have our lovely critical coffee break logo that I made and actually put on a coffee mug that I'm using right now. So yeah, anyway, I guess that's an overview of what went into making this. I'm very thankful to Orion for taking some bumps and bruises and for making himself available for a couple of days. Very thankful to my brother Matt too for doing some pretty handy camera work. I mean, I don't think he has as much interest as I do when it comes to actually doing film projects, but he's actually shown that he's quite capable and probably should look into doing more of it. I'm not sure if it's like a lack of confidence on his part or whatever, but he's done 2 projects with me now, and both times it's turned out very well. And like, for instance, this shot here, this rotating angle, that all came from him. He wasn't told to do that. We did many takes of this because it was a sequence that both Orion and I became very adept at doing and could repeat, and it's one of the more legitimate looking fighting sequences in the whole video. So it was important that we get it right, and this version of it was the one that I went with, this rotating angle, and it fits the action too well. And again, it all came from my brother, just I guess messing around and finding the right angles.